Hello everyone, welcome to our channel, TJ Comments and Responses. I hope you are all doing well. In this new video, we will prepare for the Be Better Teachers section for the week of November 11th to 17th. I hope this will be helpful to many of you. Let's get started. Alright, let's begin with simplicity, what Jesus did. Audience analysis. Question 1. What example did Jesus use to teach that Jehovah cares for us? Jesus used the example of the birds of the sky to illustrate that Jehovah cares for his creatures. He reminded his followers that birds neither sow nor reap, yet God feeds them. If Jehovah cares so well for the birds, which are of lesser value than humans, how much more will he care for his servants? Additional comments. Jesus not only used birds as an example of how God cares for all his creation, but he also intended to show that nature itself is a visible lesson of Jehovah's provision. Every day, we can see how God cares for birds without them needing to exert excessive effort to survive. By using such a simple and everyday example like birds, Jesus also teaches us to pay attention to what surrounds us in nature to remember God's love and provision. Birds, which seem so small and defenseless, receive Jehovah's care, underscoring his loving concern for all living beings. Question 2. Although Jesus knew many things about birds, why did he focus on such a simple idea, and why was this a good teaching method? Jesus could have mentioned complex details about nature and birds, but he chose a simple, direct idea so that everyone could understand. Using a simple illustration helps people, regardless of their education or level of knowledge, grasp the message quickly. Moreover, a simple idea is easier to remember and apply in daily situations. This method was effective because it connects a deep spiritual truth, trust in Jehovah, with a simple, everyday observation that anyone can notice and remember. Additional comments. Jesus understood that a simple idea is much easier to remember and apply. If he had used a complex illustration, he might have lost his listeners' attention or made understanding difficult. By choosing something simple, like birds, he ensured that the message was clear and reached the heart. Additionally, Jesus used this method because he knew that people could better relate to examples from their daily lives. Birds were something everyone could observe, regardless of social or educational background. In this way, the message was universal and easy to understand for everyone. Question 3. What do we learn from Jesus' example? Jesus' example teaches us that when teaching or sharing something important, it's valuable to use simple and understandable examples so that the message resonates in people's hearts. A complex explanation isn't necessary to convey deep spiritual truths. We learn that Jehovah's love and care for us is a constant truth, and we can have full confidence in his provision, just as birds trust in finding food without excessive worry. Additional comments. We learn that in teaching, we should focus on what truly matters and be clear. Jesus didn't try to impress people with advanced knowledge, instead, his goal was for them to understand and remember the message. This attitude shows that the purpose of teaching is to help others, not to demonstrate superiority. We also learn to trust more in Jehovah and to reduce our worries. If God cares even for small birds, He will certainly care for us. This example encourages us to strengthen our faith in Jehovah's never-failing support, even in difficult times. Now, let's move on to simplicity, imitate Jesus. Audience analysis. Question 1. Why is it important not to talk too much when teaching? Talking too much can overwhelm the student, causing them to lose interest or feel burdened. It's better to focus on essential and relevant information so the student can absorb it clearly and deeply. Question 2. What is the purpose of focusing on the study manual material? Focusing on the material from the study manual ensures that the student receives the most important and structured information. This helps make learning progressive and builds a solid foundation based on the material. Question 3. What should the teacher do if the student doesn't know the answer or responds incorrectly? The teacher should ask additional questions to guide the student toward the correct answer. This allows the student to reflect and arrive at the conclusion independently, strengthening their understanding and confidence in the topic. Question 4. Why is it important to move on to the next point if the student has already understood the idea? If the student has already grasped the concept, it's best to move on to avoid unnecessary repetition. This keeps the lesson interesting and productive, helping the student progress without becoming bored or feeling stuck. Question 5. How can a teacher use the student's prior knowledge to help them learn something new? By briefly reviewing what the student already knows, the teacher can connect new concepts with previous knowledge, making learning easier. This technique leverages the student's existing understanding as a base for grasping more complex ideas. Question 6. What questions should the teacher ask when choosing an example to explain an idea? The teacher should ask, is it a simple example? Will my student understand it easily, and will my student remember the main idea, or just the example? These questions ensure that the example is clear, memorable, and reinforces the main teaching without distracting or confusing the student. Question 7. Why is it important to choose simple examples in teaching? Simple examples are easy to understand and remember, helping the student grasp the main idea without getting distracted by unnecessary details. Additionally, a simple example can better connect with the student's everyday life, reinforcing its practical application. Question 8. How can the teacher ensure the student will remember the main idea and not just the example? The teacher should choose examples closely related to the main idea and emphasize the concept when explaining the example. This helps the student associate the example with the key teaching rather than just the anecdote or illustration used. See also comments. Matthew 11:25. Jesus highlights that spiritual understanding doesn't depend on elevated knowledge or being seen as wise in human terms, but rather on having a humble and receptive heart, like a child. This verse encourages us to approach Bible teaching with humility and a willingness to learn, setting aside intellectual pride. When teaching others, it's helpful to remember this principle. Often, those with less biblical knowledge or religious experience can grasp deep truths if they are taught with simplicity and love. John 16:12. Jesus showed great sensitivity to the learning pace of his disciples, understanding that they were not yet ready to receive all the information he had. This verse reminds us of the importance of being patient and adapting the teaching according to each person's capacity and the right time. When studying the Bible with someone, it's useful to pace the information, avoiding overwhelming the student. This allows them to absorb and reflect on what they've learned before moving on to deeper or more complex topics. 1 Corinthians 2:1. The Apostle Paul emphasized that in teaching, he didn't aim to impress with complicated words or human wisdom but focused on conveying God's message clearly and directly. This teaches us that the effectiveness of Bible teaching doesn't come from our ability to speak or appear wise, but from the simplicity and clarity with which we communicate biblical truths. This humble and direct approach helps the message reach people's hearts without getting lost in unnecessary details or complicated language. Well, those were the presentation examples for this week's Be Better Teachers section. I hope it will be of great help to you, my dear brothers and sisters. I send you a big hug, and may Jehovah always bless and protect you.